A mother watches in horror as an HOA board member grabs her disabled daughter from her wheelchair and throws her onto a lunch table in the school cafeteria. 3 minutes later, SWAT police surround the school. What happened next will make your blood boil and bring tears to your eyes. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The autumn sun cast long shadows across Maplewood Elementary's playground as Sarah Martinez wheeled her daughter Emma toward the cafeteria entrance. Emma, 7 years old with bright hazel eyes and pigtails bouncing despite her wheelchair, clutched her lunchbox decorated with butterflies. Her favorite purple backpack hung on the back of her chair, covered with patches she had collected from every doctor's visit she had ever survived. "Mommy, do you think they'll have the good mac and cheese today?" Emma asked, her voice full of hope. Sarah smiled, kissing the top of her daughter's head. "I hope so, sweetie. You know how much you love it." Emma had been born with spina bifida, spending her short life in a wheelchair. But her disability never dimmed her spirit. She was the brightest light in Sarah's world, always smiling, always finding joy in the smallest things. Sarah remembered the day Emma was born, how the doctors had gathered around with worried faces, explaining the challenges ahead. They talked about surgeries, physical therapy, limitations. But they never mentioned Emma's incredible heart, her infectious laugh, or the way she could light up any room she entered. Every morning was a victory. Getting Emma ready for school took 2 hours, medications, leg braces, ensuring her wheelchair was properly adjusted, packing emergency supplies. Other parents complained about getting their kids out the door. Sarah never complained. Every day Emma went to school was a blessing, a testament to her daughter's strength and determination. As they approached the cafeteria doors, Sarah noticed Margaret Thornton standing near the entrance, clipboard in hand. Margaret was the HOA president of the Pinewood Hills community where they lived, and she had made Sarah's life miserable for the past 6 months. Every week brought a new violation notice. The wheelchair ramp Sarah installed was not aesthetically pleasing. Emma's accessible swing set was against community standards. The handrails in their front yard were an eyesore. Sarah had tried reasoning with Margaret. She had shown her the medical necessity letters, the ADA compliance documents, the legal protections for disability accommodations. Nothing worked. Margaret seemed to take personal offense to Emma's very existence, as if a child in a wheelchair somehow diminished the neighborhood's property values. Just last week, Margaret had sent a letter demanding Sarah remove the blue handicap parking sign from their driveway. The letter claimed it was visually disruptive to the community aesthetic. Sarah had ignored it, as she had ignored the previous dozen complaints. But Margaret's harassment was escalating, becoming more personal, more vicious. But Margaret had never confronted them at school before. This was Emma's safe space, her place to just be a kid. "Excuse me," Margaret's sharp voice cut through the air. "You cannot bring that wheelchair through the main entrance." Sarah stopped, her hand tightening on Emma's wheelchair handles. "What are you talking about? Emma has every right to use this entrance." Margaret stepped closer, her face twisted with disdain. "I'm on the school board now, and we have standards. That wheelchair is blocking traffic. Use the side entrance." Emma's small voice trembled. "But Mommy, the side entrance has all those stairs." "Exactly," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. "My daughter has the right to access the same entrance as every other child. This is illegal, and you know it." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Don't lecture me about the law. I know people. Important people. You and your daughter need to learn your place." Other parents were starting to stare. Sarah felt Emma shrinking in her wheelchair, her small shoulders hunching forward. This beautiful, innocent child was being humiliated, and Sarah's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. "We're going through this entrance," Sarah said firmly, moving forward. Margaret stepped directly into their path. "I don't think so." What happened next would replay in Sarah's nightmares forever. Margaret reached down and grabbed Emma's arm, yanking her forward. Emma screamed as her fragile body was pulled from the safety of her wheelchair. In one horrific moment, Margaret threw Emma onto the nearest lunch table. The 7-year-old's body hit the hard surface with a sickening thud, her head snapping back, her legs twisting at wrong angles. Emma! Sarah's scream pierced the air as she rushed to her daughter. Emma lay motionless on the table, her eyes wide with shock and pain, unable to move, unable to speak. Blood trickled from her nose. Her small chest heaved with panicked breaths. The cafeteria erupted into chaos. Children screamed. Teachers came running. But Sarah saw only her baby, her precious Emma, lying broken on that cold lunch table. Parents rushed forward, some pulling out phones to call for help, others trying to shield their own children from the horrific scene. A lunch lady dropped an entire tray of food, the crash echoing through the suddenly silent cafeteria. Emma's best friend Sophie stood frozen, her hands covering her mouth, tears streaming down her young face. "Someone call 911, a teacher shouted, her voice shaking with panic and rage. Sarah cradled Emma's head gently, tears streaming down her face. "Baby, baby, I'm here. Mommy's here. Don't move, sweetheart. Help is coming." Emma's eyes found her mother's face. "Mommy, it hurts," she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Why did she hurt me? I was just trying to eat lunch. I wasn't doing anything bad." The innocence in those words, the confusion in Emma's voice, tore Sarah's heart into pieces. Her daughter couldn't comprehend hatred. She had never known cruelty like this. In her pure, beautiful mind, everyone deserved kindness. Everyone deserved love. "I don't know, baby. I don't know." Sarah's voice broke. "But you're going to be okay. I promise you're going to be okay." Margaret stood frozen, her face pale. I didn't mean. Don't you dare." Sarah's voice was pure fury. "Don't you dare say another word. You just assaulted a disabled child. You threw my baby like she was garbage." Another parent had already called 911, and within 2 minutes, sirens filled the air. But these weren't just ambulance sirens. Multiple police vehicles screeched into the parking lot, followed by something unexpected. A SWAT vehicle. Sarah looked up in confusion as heavily armed officers poured out of vehicles, surrounding the school. Through her tears and panic, she couldn't understand what was happening. Then she saw him. Detective James Chen, her older brother, leading the tactical team. His face was stone-cold fury as he took in the scene, his niece lying injured on a table, his sister crying, and Margaret Thornton standing there with guilt written all over her face. James had been in the middle of a training exercise with the SWAT team 3 blocks away when he heard the call over the radio, child assault at Maplewood Elementary. The address was Emma's school. He had mobilized his entire team immediately, not knowing what they were walking into, but knowing his niece might be in danger. "Everyone step back from the child," James commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. 2 paramedics rushed past him to Emma. James walked straight to Margaret. "You have the right to remain silent. This is ridiculous." Margaret sputtered. "I'm on the school board. I know the mayor. You can't arrest me for assault on a minor. For child endangerment. For violating the Americans with Disabilities Act." James's voice was ice. "Lady, you just committed multiple felonies in front of 50 witnesses. Your connections won't save you now." The paramedics were carefully stabilizing Emma's neck and spine. "We need to transport immediately," one said to Sarah. "Possible spinal injuries, head trauma. We're taking her to County General." Sarah's world was collapsing. Her baby, her sweet Emma who had never hurt anyone, was being loaded onto a stretcher, crying for her mommy. "I'm coming with her," Sarah said, climbing into the ambulance. As they pulled away, Sarah held Emma's small hand, careful not to move her. Emma's tears hadn't stopped flowing. "That lady was mean, Mommy," Emma whispered. "Why do people hate me?" Sarah's heart shattered all over again. "Nobody hates you, baby. You're perfect. You're so loved. Some people they have darkness in their hearts. But you're pure light. You always have been. Am I going to be okay?" "Yes, baby. You're going to be okay. I won't let anything else hurt you. I promise." At the hospital, Sarah paced the waiting room while doctors examined Emma. X-rays, CT scans, neurological assessments. Each minute felt like an hour. Each hour felt like a lifetime. The waiting room fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, creating a sterile, cold atmosphere that made Sarah's anxiety worse. Other families sat scattered around the room, some dealing with their own emergencies, others casting sympathetic glances at the woman who couldn't stop crying, couldn't stop pacing, couldn't stop replaying the image of her daughter being thrown like garbage. Sarah's hands trembled as she filled out paperwork. Medical history. Emergency contacts. Insurance information. Each question felt like an invasion when all she wanted was to be with Emma, to hold her hand, to promise her everything would be all right. Her phone buzzed constantly. Friends who had heard about the incident. The school principal calling to check on Emma. The local news asking for a statement. Sarah ignored them all. Nothing mattered except Emma. James arrived, still in his tactical gear. He wrapped his arms around his sister as she finally broke down completely. "She threw her, James. She threw my baby like she was nothing. Emma was just trying to go to lunch. She was just being a kid. And that woman treated her like. I know," James said softly. "But Margaret Thornton is in custody. She's being charged with felony child abuse, assault causing bodily injury, disability discrimination, and we're pushing for hate crime enhancements. I want her to pay," Sarah said through tears. "I want everyone to know what she did." "They will," James assured her. "I made sure every officer on scene was recording. The cafeteria cameras caught everything. And Sarah, there were parents recording too. The video is already spreading. Her life as she knows it is over." 3 hours later, Dr. Patel emerged from the examination area. Sarah jumped to her feet, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. James stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder, steadying her. Dr. Patel's face was serious but not grim. That small detail gave Sarah a spark of hope in the darkness that had consumed her for the past 3 hours. "Emma is going to be okay," Dr. Patel said, and Sarah nearly collapsed with relief. James caught her, holding her upright as sobs of relief racked her body. "She has severe bruising, a mild concussion, and significant trauma to her spine that could have been catastrophic. She's incredibly lucky. A few inches different, and we'd be having a very different conversation." Sarah's knees felt weak. The reality of how close she had come to losing Emma hit her like a physical blow. Inches. Just inches separated her daughter from permanent paralysis or death. "Can I see her?" "Of course. She's been asking for you. Actually, she hasn't stopped asking for you since she arrived. That little girl loves her mommy very much." Sarah rushed into the room where Emma lay in a hospital bed, looking so small and fragile against the white sheets. Her face was bruised, her arm in a sling, monitors beeping steadily. "Mommy," Emma said, fresh tears streaming down her face. "I want to go home." "Soon, baby. Soon." Sarah kissed her forehead gently. "The doctors say you're going to be just fine. Will that mean Lady come back?" "No, sweetheart. She's never going to hurt you again. I promise you that." Over the next few days, the story exploded. The video of Margaret Thornton throwing a disabled 7-year-old onto a lunch table went viral. Millions of people watched in horror as Emma's small body hit the table, watched Sarah's anguished scream, watched Margaret's cold indifference. News outlets picked up the story. It dominated social media feeds. #Justice for Emma trended worldwide. Strangers sent flowers, cards, and donations to the hospital. Disability rights organizations rallied around Emma's case. Child advocacy groups called for maximum penalties. The story touched something primal in people, the instinct to protect innocent children, the rage against those who abuse power and target the vulnerable. The public outcry was immediate and fierce. Margaret lost her position on the school board within hours. The HOA removed her as president and banned her from the community. Her employer, a prestigious law firm, terminated her employment. Her husband filed for divorce, releasing a statement saying he was horrified by his wife's actions and could not remain married to someone capable of such cruelty. Their adult children publicly disowned her. Margaret's face became synonymous with hatred and cruelty. Her name became a cautionary tale. But none of that mattered to Sarah. What mattered was Emma, who woke up screaming from nightmares every night. Who flinched whenever someone walked too close to her wheelchair. Who asked, over and over, "Why did she hate me, Mommy? What did I do wrong?" The preliminary hearing came 2 weeks later. The courtroom was packed with supporters wearing purple ribbons for Emma. Sarah sat in the front row, holding Emma's hand as her daughter sat in her wheelchair, still recovering. The bruises on Emma's face had faded from deep purple to yellowish green, but they were still visible. Her arm remained in a sling. She looked so small in that big courtroom, surrounded by lawyers and officials and strangers. Emma squeezed her mother's hand 3 times, their secret, "I love you," signal. Sarah squeezed back, fighting tears. Her baby shouldn't be here. She should be at school, eating lunch with her friends, laughing and playing. Not sitting in a courtroom, facing her attacker. Margaret's lawyer tried to argue that it was an accident, a misunderstanding. But the prosecutor played the video. In crystal clear footage, everyone watched Margaret deliberately grab Emma, deliberately throw her onto that table. There was no accident. No misunderstanding. Just pure, deliberate cruelty. The judge's face grew darker with each second of footage. When it finished, silence filled the courtroom. "Bail is denied," the judge said firmly. "Miss Thornton, you deliberately assaulted a vulnerable child because of her disability. You showed no remorse, no hesitation. You're a danger to the community. You'll remain in custody until trial." Margaret's face crumpled. "But Your Honor, I have a family." "So does Emma Martinez," the judge said coldly. "You should have thought about that before you assaulted a 7-year-old child in a wheelchair." As deputies led Margaret away, she looked back at Sarah and Emma. For a moment, Sarah saw something in Margaret's eyes. Not remorse. Not understanding. But fear. Fear of consequences. Fear of justice. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Sarah had prepared a statement, but when she looked down at Emma, still so small and scared, the words she'd planned disappeared. "My daughter is the bravest person I know," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "She faces challenges every single day that most of us can't imagine. And she does it with a smile, with kindness, with love. She never asks, 'Why me?' She never gives up. She just keeps shining her light." Sarah paused, wiping her eyes. What happened to Emma shouldn't happen to any child. Disabled children are not less than. They're not burdens. They're not inconveniences. They're human beings who deserve dignity, respect, and protection. If Emma's story can help even one other child avoid this kind of hatred, then maybe some good can come from this nightmare. Emma tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Can I say something, Mommy?" Sarah lowered the microphone to Emma's level. "I forgive her," Emma said softly, her small voice somehow carrying across the crowd. "Mommy says holding on to anger hurts your heart. I don't want my heart to hurt anymore. I just want kids like me to be safe. There wasn't a dry eye on those courthouse steps. Even the hardened reporters wiped tears away. The trial came 3 months later. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. Dozens of witnesses testified. The video played over and over. Medical experts explained how close Emma had come to permanent paralysis or death. Child psychologists described Emma's ongoing trauma. Margaret's defense argued she was stressed, that she didn't understand the severity of Emma's condition, that it was a moment of poor judgment. But the evidence of her previous harassment of the Martinez family destroyed that narrative. The HOA violations, the complaints, the documented pattern of discrimination. On the 4th day of trial, Emma testified. Sarah had tried to shield her from this, but Emma insisted. I want to tell my story, Mommy. Other kids need to know they can speak up too. The prosecutor was gentle, letting Emma speak at her own pace. Emma described her love for school, her friends, her dreams of becoming a teacher someday. She described the fear when Margaret grabbed her, the pain when she hit the table, the confusion about why someone would hurt her. I just wanted to eat lunch with my friends, Emma said, tears streaming down her face. I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted to be like the other kids. Margaret's lawyer chose not to cross-examine. Even he wasn't willing to attack a 7-year-old victim. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge looked directly at Margaret. Ms. Thornton, your actions were not just cruel. They were calculated. You saw a vulnerable child, and you chose violence. You chose hatred. The law exists to protect people like Emma from people like you. Margaret received 8 years in prison, followed by probation and mandatory community service at disability advocacy organizations. She was also ordered to pay substantial restitution for Emma's medical bills and therapy costs. As the sentence was read, Sarah felt Emma squeeze her hand. Is it over, Mommy? Yes, baby. It's over. But in many ways, it wasn't over. Emma still struggled with anxiety. She still had nightmares. Certain movements or sounds would make her flinch. The road to healing would be long. However, something beautiful grew from this tragedy. Sarah started a foundation in Emma's name to advocate for disabled children's rights and safety. Schools across the country updated their anti-discrimination policies. Emma's story became a catalyst for change. 1 year after the incident, Emma returned to Maplewood Elementary. The school had transformed. New accessibility features everywhere. Mandatory disability awareness training for all staff. A zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. And in the courtyard, a memorial garden where Emma loved to spend lunch. On her first day back, her classmates surrounded her wheelchair, all wearing purple ribbons. We missed you, Emma, her best friend Sophie said. We all wanted to make sure you felt safe coming back. Emma smiled, that brilliant smile that had never quite dimmed despite everything. I feel safe. Because I have all of you. Sarah watched from a distance, tears of pride streaming down her face. Her daughter, her brave, beautiful daughter, had survived something no child should endure. And she had emerged not with bitterness, but with grace. That evening, as Sarah tucked Emma into bed, Emma looked up at her mother with those wise, bright eyes. Mommy, I've been thinking. That lady hurt me because she didn't understand. She saw my wheelchair and thought I was less than other kids. But I'm not less than. I'm just different. And different is okay. Different is more than okay, baby. Different is beautiful. I want to help other kids understand that. Kids in wheelchairs, kids who look different, kids who learn different. We're all just kids trying to do our best. We all deserve to eat lunch in peace. Sarah pulled her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling the steady beat of her precious heart. You're going to change the world, Emma Martinez. You already have. Emma yawned, her eyes growing heavy. I just want to make it so no other kid gets hurt like I did. That's all. That's everything, Sarah whispered, kissing her forehead. And I'll be right beside you, every step of the way. As Emma drifted off to sleep, Sarah sat by her bedside, watching her breathe. This small, fragile, incredibly strong human being had taught Sarah more about courage, forgiveness, and love than she'd ever imagined possible. The journey hadn't been easy. The trauma had left scars, both physical and emotional. But every day, Emma chose kindness. Every day, she chose hope. Every day, she proved that no disability, no cruelty, no hatred could diminish the power of a loving heart. Margaret Thornton would serve her time, but Emma would spend hers making the world better. The contrast couldn't be clearer. 6 months later, Sarah received a letter. It was from Margaret, written from prison. The letter was long, filled with apologies and explanations. Margaret described her own struggles with her son's recent autism diagnosis, her fear and confusion, her displaced anger at seeing Emma's differences. She admitted her actions were inexcusable. She begged for forgiveness. Sarah showed the letter to Emma, unsure what to do with it. Emma read it slowly, her small finger tracing the words. When she finished, she looked up at her mother. Can we write back? Do you want to? I think she needs to know I really meant it when I said I forgave her. Forgiveness isn't just words. It's a choice you keep making. Together, mother and daughter wrote a response. Not for Margaret's benefit, but for their own peace. Because they refused to let hatred have the final word. On Emma's 9th birthday, she stood before a crowd of 500 people at a disability rights conference. She had been invited to speak, and despite her nervousness, she accepted. Sarah watched from the wings as her daughter rolled up to the microphone, adjusted it to her height, and began to speak. My name is Emma Martinez. When I was 7 years old, someone hurt me because I use a wheelchair. It was the scariest day of my life. But it wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of my purpose. Emma's voice grew stronger. I learned that cruelty comes from fear and ignorance. But love is always stronger. Kindness is always stronger. And every single person in this room, every single person watching online, every single person who has ever felt different or less than, you are strong too. Your differences don't make you weak. They make you powerful. They make you you. The audience rose in a standing ovation. Sarah couldn't stop the tears flowing down her face. Her baby, her brave, beautiful baby, had taken unimaginable pain and transformed it into purpose. After the speech, a little girl in a wheelchair rolled up to Emma. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, with big brown eyes and a shy smile. You're my hero, the little girl whispered. Emma reached out and took her small hand. You're your own hero. You just don't know it yet. But you will. I promise. Sarah watched the interaction, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. This was why they'd fought. This was why they'd endured the trial, the publicity, the pain. So that little girls in wheelchairs could have heroes who looked like them. So that disabled children everywhere could know they mattered. That night, as they drove home, Emma was quiet. Sarah glanced at her in the rearview mirror. What are you thinking about, sweetie? I'm thinking that maybe everything happens for a reason, Mommy. Not that what that lady did was okay. It wasn't. But maybe I was supposed to go through that so I could help other kids. Maybe my pain can stop someone else from hurting. You're wise beyond your years, Emma. I had a good teacher. Emma smiled. You never gave up on me, Mommy. Even when I wanted to give up on myself. You showed me that love is stronger than hate. Always. 3 years after the incident, Margaret was released on parole. She had served her time, completed her rehabilitation programs, and requested to meet with the Martinez family as part of her restorative justice process. Sarah's first instinct was to refuse. But Emma, now 10 years old and wiser than most adults, asked her mother to accept. They met in a neutral space, a community center conference room. Margaret looked different, smaller, older, humbled by her time in prison. Her eyes were filled with genuine remorse. "I don't expect forgiveness," Margaret began, her voice shaking. "I don't deserve it. What I did to you, Emma, was monstrous. I took my own pain and fear and directed it at an innocent child. I've spent every day of the last 3 years thinking about that moment, wishing I could take it back." Emma listened quietly, her hand in her mother's. "I've been working with disabled children in prison," Margaret continued. "Advocacy programs, reading to kids, learning about their experiences. I'm not telling you this to earn points. I'm telling you because you changed my life, Emma. Your words about forgiveness saved me when I wanted to give up. You showed me more grace than I ever showed you." Silence filled the room. Sarah felt Emma squeeze her hand 3 times, their secret signal for, "I love you." "Ms. Margaret," Emma said softly, "I told you I forgave you, and I meant it. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean what you did was okay. It means I'm not going to let what you did control my life anymore. I'm free because I chose forgiveness. And I hope someday, you can forgive yourself." Margaret wept openly, her shoulders shaking with sobs. "I will spend the rest of my life trying to make amends. Not to you specifically, but to every disabled child I can help. That's my purpose now." As they left the meeting, Sarah asked Emma how she felt. "I feel lighter, Mommy. Like I finally let go of the last bit of anger I was holding. Now I can just focus on the good stuff, helping kids, making friends, being happy." Sarah pulled her daughter close. "I'm so proud of you. You took the worst moment of your life and turned it into something beautiful. We did it together, Mommy. You and me. Always." 5 years after the incident, Emma Martinez stood on a stage at the state capitol as legislators passed Emma's Law, comprehensive protections for disabled children in schools, including mandatory training, severe penalties for discrimination, and resources for families. Emma, now 12, gave a speech that was broadcast nationwide. "5 years ago, someone hurt me because of my disability. Today, I stand here knowing that no other child will face what I faced without strong protections and consequences. This law isn't about revenge. It's about justice. It's about dignity. It's about making sure every child, regardless of their abilities, can go to school safely and be treated with respect." Sarah watched from the audience, surrounded by the family, friends, and advocates who had supported them through this journey. James sat beside her, his arm around his sister's shoulders. "You raised an incredible human being," James whispered. "She raised herself," Sarah replied. "I just tried to keep up." After the ceremony, Emma was surrounded by other disabled children and their families, all wanting to thank her, all wanting to share their stories. One mother, holding her nonverbal autistic son, approached with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for fighting for our children. Thank you for not staying silent." Emma reached out and touched the little boy's hand. He looked up at her and smiled, a rare and beautiful moment. "We fight for each other," Emma said simply. "That's what families do. And everyone in this community, everyone who faces challenges because of their differences, we're all family." That night, as they celebrated with dinner at Emma's favorite restaurant, Sarah reflected on the journey they'd traveled. From that horrible day in the lunchroom to this moment of triumph, they had faced darkness and chosen light. "Mommy, can I ask you something?" Emma said, twirling pasta on her fork. "Anything, baby. If you could go back and stop that day from happening, would you?" Sarah was surprised by the question. "Of course, I would never want you to go through that pain." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "I don't think I would. I mean, I wouldn't want it to happen to anyone else. But for me, it made me who I am. It gave me purpose. It showed me that even the worst things can't stop you if you choose to keep going. And look at all the kids we've helped. That wouldn't have happened if that day hadn't happened. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. You're the strongest person I know. I learned from the best. Emma grinned. Besides, I figure if I can survive being thrown on a lunch table by an HOA Karen and live to tell the tale, I can survive anything. They laughed together, and in that laughter was healing, was hope, was the unbreakable bond between a mother and daughter who had faced the worst and emerged victorious. Emma Martinez's story didn't end in that lunchroom. It began there. And every day since, she had chosen to write her own narrative, not as a victim, but as a survivor, an advocate, and a beacon of hope for every child who had ever felt different, less than, or invisible. Because Emma Martinez was never invisible. She was a force of nature, wrapped in a small body in a purple wheelchair, teaching the world that true strength isn't about walking or running. It's about refusing to let cruelty win. It's about choosing kindness when the world chooses hate. It's about standing up, whether on two legs or from a wheelchair, and saying, I matter. We all matter. And together, we will make this world better. And she did. They did. Together.